am Shlomo Trudler, the very proud father of one Miss Esty Trudler. I live in Philadelphia, and I have the pleasure, privilege, and honor of having an apartment in Jerusalem and a daughter in Jerusalem.
That's great. Okay, so we're going to start off with you, Dad. The first question I'm going to ask you is what was your biggest concern when your child, when Esty first brought up studying in Israel?
I don't know that it was a concern. I think it was more so of a desire that in her stage of development and in kind of where she was, that she would be making kind of intelligent and informed decisions, and it wouldn't just be, oh, my friends are doing this, or oh, I'm being reflexive and emotional, but like there was an intentionality and that there was a plan. Um, I think kind of the path in the US is like a clearly defined path for better or worse. The path in Israel is generally far from defined, which in some ways makes it better, in some ways makes it more challenging, right? You got an intentionality in the path and kind of be willing to handle curveballs and handle changes and understand that things may not be what you always anticipate them being for all sorts of different reasons. Um, and there's an adjustment, there's language, there's culture, there's resources. I was, thrilled that Esty took the education that we gave her to heart and kind of made a decision that this was where she wanted to be. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't something done without a plan to figure out where to go from there. And it wasn't kind of like, oh my God, I'll see what happens tomorrow. But rather, hey, this is what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Esty, you're up. So, what first made Israel an option for you?
Um, so I spent a year, um, a gap year in Israel after graduating high school, at a seminary called Shalom for Women. And during my year there, I was learning about many different options of potentially staying in Israel. And I called my parents and I was like, I think I want to stay. Um, And obviously, I mean, like my father was talking about, like he wanted to make sure that I was making a logical decision. It was a conversation. We talked about it. I looked into a bunch of different options. Um, but yeah, I didn't really think about it before doing a year in Israel. Um, and suddenly there was so many options that I didn't know were available to me. Until I kept on hearing from friends or people who came to present at my seminary about colleges, national service, like, yeah, really just a bunch of different things. And then I realized that that's what I wanted to do.
Great. Okay, now for your father. So now that your child's here, what's giving you the most peace of mind as a parent?
It's a great question. I think kind of it's probably two different things, three different things. One is thankfully Esty has a very strong network of both friends and family, so that she's not alone, which I think is helpful. Um, Part of that is developed through us, part of that's developed just through her own friends and her own experiences. So it's something that was not something that we had involved with. Two is I do believe firmly and wholeheartedly that she is home and that this is where we belong. So I think kind of that gives me peace of mind, which is I think Kadosh Baruch Hu, God wants us to do what she's doing. And I think that's something that gives me a lot of peace of mind. And then three, I think, for the most part, there are obviously exceptions, Esty. For the most part, she is able to articulate kind of a plan and a path that actually has some definition. And when she shows that growth and maturation, it says, hey, I'm owning my process As a parent, there's few things you could ask for more than that because it shows that you've given your child the tools to, what's the word that you guys like to use? Be adulting. Like, is, give them the tools to develop into mature and contributing adults. And I think there are definitely times where Rusty's not fully there yet, but I think kind of on the whole, I think there's it could be a lot of peace of mind knowing that she's thoughtful and intentional.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, so Esty, what skills do you think that you've gained here in Israel that you wouldn't have gained at home?
Um, I mean, I think it's a little obvious, but I definitely gained a lot of independence. Um, I don't live with my parents. I live in another country across the world. And I'm forced to learn things that I maybe wouldn't have needed to really deal with without their like support necessarily or their knowledge till a little bit later on in my life. I anything like medical insurance or like just figuring out the Israeli system in general, that's not a something that they're familiar with. And so they can only give me so much of their knowledge and wisdom about it because they've never worked with that system before. And so I guess as my father was saying, like adulting, like I've learned to be a lot more independent and how to kind of adult myself in another whole nother country. If I had stayed in America, if I had gone back to America after my gap year, I would have probably been back in my house in Philadelphia every weekend, and I would have had my mom making me dinners and still helping me with like medical things and just a bunch of like random like things that our parents kind of do for us as we get older, sometimes making appointments, whatever it is. Now it's all on me. And so I definitely learned a lot of like skills about responsibility and independence that I may not necessarily would have learned at this point in my life if I was still in America.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Israel gives you a huge advantage in the independence department, which is really helpful for your future. Um, okay, so my next question. Okay, so how did the cost of studying in Israel compare to options when you were like that you were considering in the US?
This is for me.
Um, I mean, for your
But
dad, but it could kind of be for both of you guys, I
I,
think.
I, I, I think the simple answer is I don't know that it's a linear equation, but if it were a linear equation, the expense that I would be paying for her to pursue a higher education in college in the US um, is probably more than it would be to have her attend a comparable educational institution in Israel, flying her back once a month. Um, and I would still probably, be paying less. But as I said, it's not a linear equation because the path of education in Israel could be a longer path. There are other expenses that get factored into it. Um, in terms of just the independence, where there's much more need to kind of pursue your own resources in Israel than there is here. So if it's a straight linear equation, it's not even in the same ballpark. I think kind of the expense in Israel the expense in the U.S. would be exponentially larger than the expense in Israel. I do think that it's kind of, if you want to look at it in its totality at a kind of on a more organic basis, it's still going to be more cost efficient, but it might take longer and it might have other kind of costs alongside that are probably hard to quantify. So on the whole, I think the answer is Israel will be a less expensive process than here. But I think I do think it's only looking at part of the picture, even though I think on the whole, that's probably still the answer.
Yeah.
I'd also say that everybody experiences their transition into Israel differently, but I mean, I did Shirt Lumi. I did my national service after my year in seminary. And I also, this past October, I made Aliyah. And so Israel does an amazing job supporting you after those experiences. Um, right now, I'm finishing up Mechina at Hebrew, a preparatory pre-academic preparatory program. And just from my national service from Beirut, I get a scholarship, and I don't think my parents are paying any. I actually think I get money from the program because I did national service. And next year, I will be um, going to Reichman, going to IDC, and studying communications. And I also think that I don't know if because I made Aliyah, they pay. I don't think they pay the whole thing, but because I made Aliyah, they're paying for a lot of my university. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I
yeah,
do. I think I think Cassie's right, which is what the zechuyot, the benefits that you get from Aliyah have a real material, financial and economic value. Um, because again, I think the state of Israel wants to incentivize people to make Aliyah. Um, and again, because there are costs in Israel, and that's why I say you have to look at the totality, right? Because there are costs in Israel over the long haul that are disproportionately high relative to the U.S. taxes, cars, et cetera. Israel needs to incentivize people to come to kind of offset some of that expense. So I think, and they do a really nice job of that. And I think kind of one of the going back to something we talked about before, when I said, hey, Esther, you got to make intelligent and informed decisions. One of the questions we had was when she decided I want to make Aliyah was when is the right time relative to the value of the different factors that go into consideration.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of different aspects of going, not going. Um, okay, so Esty, my next question for you is how has being in Israel opened doors for you, if it has, professionally, or how has it helped you build connections?
um, I will say that I thought that I had a path that I was going on. I was supposed to study at Stern. I was supposed to go to YU. Um, and then when I decided I want to make Aliyah, I actually reconsidered my entire I like career path. I was supposed to study psychology, maybe minor in marketing. And then when I decided I wanted to study in Israel, I was like, maybe this isn't what I want to do. Maybe this isn't the right path for me to go if I'm staying in this country, because different countries, different jobs are more
Yeah,
popular in different places. Um, and I wanted to study psychology. It was something that I was super interested in, but I also had a lot of other interests that didn't necessarily maybe make as much sense for me if I were to have stayed in America. But in Israel, I was like, wow, new opportunities, different things that maybe I can study that I'm interested in. Um, I made a lot of connections, I'd say, at seminary. I've made a lot of connections when I worked for my Shira Lumi. I worked in a hospital. I don't want to go into the medical fields, but even so, like I made a lot of connections with the staff there and the people that I met there. And like I said, right now I'm doing a pre-academic program. And part of the goal at the end of the program is to get me a certificate to allow me to go to school in an Israeli school. It's mostly for like a direct admissions into Hebrew U if I were to want to study at Hebrew U. Um, I'm actually looking into studying somewhere else, but they there's just a lot of like different things that I now was had to consider. Do I want to study in English in Israel? There's so many opportunities to study in English in Israel. The, my friends are studying nursing at Mechon Tal, and it's a hybrid transitional program. There's hybrid transitional programs in Tel Aviv, Bar Ilan, um, just a bunch of different places. If you want to study in English, there's Hebrew U, there's also Bar Ilan, there's Reichman, IDC, like there's so many opportunities. And I realized that I potentially want to study in Hebrew, and there's opportunities for me to do that too. Um, and so I really thought about that. Um, and yeah, I mean, over time, like I was really given those resources. I'm now getting a certificate to allow me to study in these places, and I've met a lot of teachers and other students who are in the program with me that are also like thinking about different options, and that really grows your like it really grew my community and like my connections. And they say in this country runs on protexia, which is like connections. 1 second. Sorry. Um, they say that country really runs on connections, and so that it really shows that like the things that you do in your life, especially in this country, and the people you meet and the connections you make really make a difference, and they can get you really far. And I'm really seeing that to be true, and it's yeah.
That's really awesome. I'm so glad that you made all these connections. Sounds amazing. Okay, let's see what the next question is. Okay, so for you, Mr. Trudler, we have what convinced you that Israel could provide a strong academic experience for SD?
Um, I don't know that I needed a lot of convincing. Yeah, I am familiar with a number of the academic programs in Israel and kind of their strengths. Um, and I think kind of uh, SD's ability to kind of also advocate for the quality of the education she would receive. Um, but I was blessed enough to be familiar with a number of the institutions in advance and kind of be able to feel confident going in.
It's great. Okay. SD, what has been the most rewarding part of your experience by being in Israel and studying here and Sheru and all of that?
The most rewarding part. I mean, definitely, I would say getting to make this decision on my own, getting the opportunity to make this decision on my own, um, super rewarding, and to like still be here and see it through, and see how much I've gained from my experience so far, from like from my route, from college here. Like I've just grown so much, and gained so many skills, and I've really like seen myself improve, and I've learned a lot like coming here. My Hebrew was extremely basic. I can maybe introduce myself and say where I'm from. And now I can probably have a really smooth whole conversation with somebody, and I'll understand pretty much everything they'll say. Like the improvement is tremendous, and it's crazy to like look back and see that for myself. And I remember when I first started Mechina, and everyone was like asking me about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't see the end. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I can't
I
imagine myself
remember.
coming out of here and being able to speak a new language. And then here I am with one more Ulpan class left, and
Wow.
I almost can, I wouldn't say fluently, but I can speak a new language, like a language that I could not have really spoken before. And so just like seeing this growth in myself, and seeing myself grow in a like be part of a new community and make new friends and meet new people and serve a country, do my part, like it's really amazing to look back and like see how far I've come. And I definitely, I mean, it's pretty big, but it's super rewarding to see all that effort that you put in, and this decision that like I made like really come out so amazing. Like you don't necessarily know that like it's when you make Aliyah or when you decide to stay in Israel, you don't necessarily know that it's gonna turn out amazing or it's gonna really exceed your expectations. Um, a lot of the time it might not necessarily, but I will say like I'm really, really fortunate that so far that's my experience.
Well, it sounds like you've come really far. I remember when you were telling me in the beginning of the journey about like the Hebrew, and I remember you saying like I do not know anything. So it's
My Hebrew
amazing
was
how
as
far you
far as Moshe had provided
come.
me.
Exactly.
That you didn't learn Ivrit in Tichon?
I think
Um, לא,
I
ממש
think
שנה
we I think we
הייתי.
learn everything but the Hebrew speaking part.
Well,
Yeah. I can tell you made me
I,
grash and
I,
chadar
right.
ochel.
I was gonna say her high school experience was definitely not one to have provided
It's true.
a real Ivrit.
It's true. Okay, so to end off with the last two questions. So, okay, this one is for you, Mr. Truler. So, what advice would you give to a parent who's still unsure about sending their kid to Israel?
You got him really thinking.
It's hard to say because I think everybody's different, and I think every situation is different. So I'm trying to think of something that's kind of like broad enough, but also narrow enough that it's like real practical advice. And I think part of it is we spend a lot of time as parents trying to instill the values in our children that will allow them to manifest our vision of our legacy, right? Kind of, every fiber of our being as parents is invested in our children's success. And why? Right? Because the they are the next generation. They are the ones who carry on our names. They are the ones who carry on what we've instilled within them. Um, and I think kind of if we believe that as a value, Israel is important to us as a people, right? And our children are looking to live the values that we've instilled within them. I don't know what more we can ask for as parents. I think if you didn't actually believe it was a value, then are you going to teach your kids that it's not a value? Okay, fine. That's I think parents have that right. And then you kind of need to talk about all the wonderful economic opportunities in Israel and all the growth and all the development and all. And honestly, the fact that it is far and away the safest place for a Jewish person in today's day and age, right? There are a lot of other things other than the value. But for me, I think kind of I used to love when people were like,
Oh no, I think he glitched out. Oh
Hello,
no.
father.
"Oh my God, your daughter's going to live in Israel." That's
You
uh,
froze. You froze
my
completely. The last thing is um I don't even remember.
I was wondering if I froze because I saw you guys freeze on my screen. But I said I like what I wrapped up before was basically saying I spent 20 years of my life trying to educate my daughter that this is a value. The fact that she listened to me once is like I'm gonna be upset that I finally after 20 years got asked you to listen to me. Like no, like what like if if we are looking to create legacy, um, which I think again, I think every parent is trying to do, whether they recognize it, they don't recognize it. Like every parent is trying to create, you know, the best place for their family on a go forward basis.
Yeah,
Um, and I think, like, what more is there to say?
yeah, it's true. Okay, I think we have one more minute because I don't know if I extended the Zoom time. So, Esty, I'm gonna ask you a really quick last question. What
Got it.
advice would you give to someone considering this path?
Wow, yeah, I don't have time to think. All right. Um,
Sorry.
honestly, like do it. This is one of the biggest points of change in your life. And people say it's really hard, like to leave your family and like this is what I'm used to, or Target, Costco, all these different things. this is the point of change in your life. And as hard as it is, I think that this is the easiest it'll get. You know, picking up and moving an entire family, or once you're comfortable, once you're back and comfortable in America, it's not easy. And I'm not saying it's easy now, but my life is already changing. And so I think that doing this right now, learning in Israel, being in an Israeli college, or just being in Israel in your college time and in your younger 20s, or when you're learning and changing, that's the best time to meet other people and make connections and integrate together with all the rest of those people that are like even Israelis, they're also changing during this time period. So you're really setting yourself up for integration like altogether at the same time as everybody else that lives here. And I think that like really now is I mean now is always the time for everybody, for anybody, everybody. Like
אם אין עכשיו, אימתי?
בדיוק. And like our brains are still developing. Learning Hebrew, once you're older, it's harder. It's everything is harder. Like really, if not now, when? Like now really is the best time. And even if you think that you're going alone, like I happen to have been so fortunate that I have two aunts and uncles with families here, and I have like di more distant cousins, and I have cousins that were moving here at the same time as me. We all like I got to do it with them. And I also had a lot of friends that were doing it. But even if you don't know have friends doing it or your immediate family's not there, my immediate family's still in America. Um, you really do have a support system. All Olim, all the people that move at this stage in their life, they're all there to support you. There's organizations, there's communities, there's people like everyone's all in the same boat and everybody just wants to support each other. And so even if you feel alone, like you're really not. And it's hard. And when you're not with your family for Chagim, or if you're sick, like it's hard, but you really do have a support system and you're really not alone. And just to see that achdut and like to be here, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaZikaron, like, and being in a park and seeing all the white and blue and everybody celebrating, there's no better feeling. There's really no better feeling of feeling like a part of something and feeling like a part of a people, a nation. Like that's truly like I, I I feel like my truest self when I'm here. And I think that like now really is the time to do it for anybody. And again, it's hard, it's scary, but this feeling, it's worth it. It really is.
Incredible. Great answer. Great way
Thanks.
to end off.